Lucky Boys Podcast.
I started volunteering full-time since September for Andrew Yang's campaign.
Right. You were making a lot of noise for Andrew Yang.
Yeah, because there was a media blackout on him for his entire run.
Yeah, that's true.
The media didn't want to talk about him when he was in different standings, in the polls or in fundraising. Yeah, but they would cut him out.
Yeah,
they would cut him out and put other people that were polling lower or fundraised less above him. Or
why is that?
I can't say. There's so many theories, and I think mainly it talks about the invisibility of Asians in our country.
Right, but he was polling better than a lot of the other candidates.
Yeah, and they excluded him. They'll say his name wrong. They'll put pictures of other photos of other people on
other Asians.
Yeah, other Asians. It was like the most insane thing. And,
how disrespectful.
Yeah, it was crazy. He got more media coverage the day he dropped out than he had the entire year. It was the most insane kind of thing, and he was around 5th place.
Right. He finally got his name right after he dropped out.
That's
so messed up.
So he was nobody knew who he was, right? Nobody. I didn't know who he was, right? And he was a complete nobody in a field of 30 that were sitting governors, well-known congressmen and senators. And
people with a higher political resume than
him, and he outlasted all of them through grassroots,
real issues with real solutions.
Yeah, real solutions.
That's what I found most. It wasn't his charisma, it wasn't his looks, it wasn't because we look, our eyes do the same thing.
Yeah,
it was the ideas, it was just the brain behind everything that made me go, oh my gosh, this guy. I gotta tell you, man, I would have loved to see him go up for election.
Of course,
this election,
of course,
than what we have now.
He was the best chance at beating Trump because most the people who supported Andrew Yang, they were Trump voters, conservatives,
right,
libertarians, independents,
I forgot about that.
Progressives, liberals, mainstream Democrats, and people who don't give a fuck about politics. And because he was a heterodox, he identified the problems, and gave a macro perspective of what's going on in our country, and talked about, you hear politicians, they talk about the economy, they talk about immigration, they talk about healthcare, education, et cetera, right?
All the checklists.
And they have their viewpoints on it, right? But Andrew Yang was the first person that I ever heard talk about all those things and how they're interconnected. And what are the root problems of our society and how do we solve those problems? And he gave reasonable solutions, because when I first heard about him, right, a friend, he's like, oh, have you heard about this guy named Andrew Yang running for president? It was January 2019. And I was like, the Asian guy, the business dude?
I think that was a lot of people's initial way to kind of introduce him, the Asian guy,
the business dude.
I hope he doesn't embarrass us.
Yes, exactly. It's always that. We always think that he doesn't embarrass us, right? And I was like, and I'm thinking, Trump is in power. There's a huge divide in our country. I feel like our country is inherently racist. Definitely not. He had no chance in hell, right? And then my friend was like, I understand why you feel this way. But he's going to be on the Joe Rogan podcast next month, February. And, he has really great ideas, really, interesting perspectives. So I'm like, all right, I like Joe Rogan. He's entertaining. I like what, the conversations that he has. And when the podcast came out, the first 15 minutes, I was just like, holy shit, he has the answers. He identified the problems. He has the ideas and the solutions. And I'm like, I didn't care. Him being Asian didn't at that point was a wash.
Right.
It was it doesn't matter. I'm like, this guy knows how to fix all of this, and we need him to lead the country.
Right.
Yeah.
To me, he was like an Asian unicorn.
Yeah.
I just, when I heard him speak, I was like, oh my gosh, he's shredding on the debate. They didn't even want to ask him questions.
No.
Because he was shredding. And there was no, I think they tested trying to
They tried to trap him. You know, they tried to bait him into like answering questions about like China and all this other stuff.
But he was way too
ahead of the curve. And he had the least speaking time in every single debate.
And was it me, or did you also notice that it seemed like no other politician wanted any smoke with Andrew Yang?
They didn't want no smoke with him. They didn't want no smoke because you can't argue the facts.
Right.
You know, because the entire...
And he just knew more. He just knew more facts than they did. They had talking points.
They had talking points. They have their advisors, policy advisors that tell, you know, say this is what you need to do. Yeah.
Do this.
Yeah, this is what, you know, the black people like to hear. This is what, you know, conservatives like to hear. This is what, you know, and you'll
poll better if you'll poll better if you say these words.
Yeah. And Andrew's just like, well... No, I'm just going to tell you what I think. You know, this is
to be fair, I feel like Andrew Yang did have talking points as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of the stuff he did was, I heard
over and over again. Yeah.
And I understand why. But when it's up for the debate part of it, you can clearly see that his ideas were superior.
Yeah, they're infinitely superior.
And I'll tell you what, I hate to say it, but if he wasn't Asian, would he be going against Trump now? Would he have been? I think so.
Partially, yeah. I mean, that's
maybe not, right? But here's one thing I will say: he would have been covered more.
Oh yeah, by far. Yeah.
Okay. He would have been covered more fairly. More people would have knew about him. They wouldn't just cancel him out.
Yeah.
Right. Dismiss him only because the way he looks.
Yeah.
You know, like because a lot of people aren't used to seeing an Asian man. That's why that's why I say
that's
like a
one
unicorn.
factor. Like, yeah, the way he looks, but like, you know, maybe that is, maybe that's not. You know, I feel like that is working in entertainment. You know, and understanding, you know, how we're painted as, you know, in this country. You know, but also, you know, he talked the truth. He talked the reality that you know, most news outlets couldn't like sensationalize.
Right.
Too. You know,
and he's very articulate.
Yeah, incredibly articulate.
And you met him.
Yeah, many times.
You met him many times. How is he like as a person when the cameras aren't rolling?
He's just a regular guy. Like, he just, like, what I like about him is that he's a regular guy who just happens to be really smart. You know, he's like a normal dude.
That's kind of what I got from watching him during the interviews. I'm like, man, I could chill with this dude.
Yeah,
you know, he seemed like a cool dude, and I could listen to him speak about several things, and it doesn't even have to be about politics, just regular life. Yeah. And I feel like we could relate on a lot of things. Like, and he just seemed like somebody that I know.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like he's switching up his personality because he's on camera.
Yeah.
It just feels like he's just a normal guy who, like you said, like he's a smart guy, and then he's able to articulate his points clearly.
Yeah, and he's himself the whole way through. He's like, it feels genuine, it feels authentic. You know, that's the problem with a lot of these politicians is because with their political self, when they're campaigning and when they're talking to crowds, they have a particular facade and persona that they're putting out there, right? But then when you get them into like a podcast setting and you're just sitting with them and you're having a conversation, it's their personality shows, and that's what people like. That's what people love. You know, it's a big reason why we have like Trump right now is you know, people are tired of these career politicians. You know, like on the Republican side, they were done with the politicians, and they were like, okay, he may say the wrong things and he, you know, says off-color things, but we know who he is. You know, he's had media exposure for decades, right? But people know, like this, we know who he is. You know, this is exactly, even if he's lying. You know, he's genuinely who he is.
So they're just tired of the fakeness. They just want someone that's real. For better or for worse, America wants someone that's real.
Yeah, but for better or worse, America wants, you know, someone who's real, and you know, Trump spoke to a lot of the hurt that people were going throughout the entire country. You know, we had Trump saying "Make America Great Again." Right. Meanwhile, Hillary and her camp was like, America is already great. America is already fine. But if you go into the middle of the country and you see all these communities that got decimated by automation, by you know, Amazons, and you see tech companies that completely pulled talent and brain drained these talents to the West Coast and San Francisco area, New York, Atlanta, to all these metropolitan hubs, and nothing comes back to the community, and people don't have any jobs. People have turned to got addicted to opioids, right? And They got and once their prescription ran out, they turned to like fentanyl and all these things. So we had the highest suicide rates in our history.
Right.
In Middle America. In Middle America.
In the middle of America.
Yeah, and that's where you were canvassing. So you were boots on the ground, kind of seeing all this play out.
Yeah, and it was and the first time I heard of it was really when I heard Andrew Yang speak. I was completely like, I'm from New York, born and raised, right? I had moved out to LA, so my perspective really of America comes from these two coastal metropolitan bubbles. Right. That doesn't represent everywhere else. But then when I found, when Andrew was talking about like what's going on in our country, like 78% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck.
That's crazy.
Crazy, right? Over half Americans cannot afford an unexpected $400 bill, right? So, and if you're struggling, your bandwidth is just trying to survive,
Absolutely.
Right? And so when you're trying to survive, you lose your IQ, your mental capacity.
You're not going out there learning new things. You're just focused on trying to survive.
So then you have Trump that comes in and says, "Oh, it's the Mexicans, it's the immigrants, it's whoever." And it gives people like, "Oh, okay."
And now, most recently, is the Chinese.
It's the Chinese.
He creates a fictional enemy, a target, so that we can all gang up together and go, it's them, down with them. Oh, forget about it. It's a deflection. It's a tactic.
It's scapegoating. It's instead of like looking at ourselves as a country, what's going on with ourselves and how can we help and uplift our country. So when I heard Andrew Yang speak, he just okay, we need to do universal basic income, right? This would give a baseline that would help solve this. Even at $1,000 a month, if the poverty line is at $12,000 a year, right, that $1,000 a month for every adult would uplift the entire country out of poverty.
Amazing. That sounds absolutely terrific. And I am all for UBI. I mean, hey, give me $1,000 extra in my I mean, I will not fight against that and give my buddy that's struggling $1,000 extra. I'm all for that. It's beautiful. Here's the thing where I feel a lot of people are skeptical of.
Yeah, sure.
They love Andrew Yang. They love what he's saying. They love the message. Who wouldn't want $1,000? But is it going to be one of those things where we go, man, yes. Like, let's say Andrew Yang did get in office, and we're all like, oh my gosh, absolutely, yes, yes, he's our guy. We're gonna get all this, and it's just candy in your when he gets to office, thinking that he's gonna be able to make all these changes that they were just words. No fault to his own. It's due to the system.
Yeah,
he needs other people's approval, and only to get into office and go, oh my God, I can't really. His hands are tied.
Well, the president can't do everything. Right, one person can't do everything. It may feel like Trump's doing everything, but you have to have.
But it's also the president's job to persuade and unite, and implement some of these ideas. Otherwise, they're just words. Right?
Yeah, so that's why Andrew Yang was great, because if you looked at his followers, the people that support him, they're everyone. And we're talking about like universal basic income. This was like a Republican conservative idea. A conservative state right now, like Alaska, has had a form of UBI for the past 40 years.
Right.
So, because you can't demonize money, giving money. Like the thing that makes it, that would stigmatize it is like conditional, like because it's universal, it's for everyone. Right. Everyone gets it. Right. You can't
it's not like, hey, that's not fair.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I'm paying taxes for you to get money. And that's what a lot of our politics are, and where a lot of our disagreements are. It's like, oh, I'm putting out for you guys, instead of you contributing and earning.
I would have loved to see Andrew Yang in office. Take that seat.
Yeah. And it was when I talked to like white people, brown people, black people about Andrew Yang, like they're like, wow, this is incredible. Like, I love his ideas. I love what this is about. And then, but I get the most pushback from Asians. Right. Asian Americans.
Isn't that strange?
Interesting.
Yeah. Most pushback.
Yeah. Most of the things I hear about Andrew Yang that are not kind words are from other Asians.
Yeah. What do you
like
hear?
99% of it?
Yeah. What do you usually hear?